a huge catalog of my work just disappeared from the public.
And can you tell the story behind that? Because I'm not trying to do any type of gotcha. I'm just trying to understand what happened there. Because I remember the day. I remember the day where I think your name was trending on the app called Twitter at the time. And I think I was in the UK at the time. So I'm kind of seeing all the hubbub, but I'm sort of some hours behind what's gone on the previous day. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then I see a clip of you saying something that sounds a little bit crazy. So especially for the people who just saw that or heard that, but don't know any wider context, why you said it, what was meant, can you elaborate on that and just explain it?
Yeah, it was just about a year ago. So it was end of February last year. And the way the news tells it, I said something racist about black people. But let me give you the full context.
Sure.
First of all, for the benefit of the viewers, maybe you can confirm this. Have you ever seen a story about a public figure that was accurate?
Probably.
It's rare, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're the subject of stories, as I have been for many years, I'll look at the story and I'll say, they got like really basic stuff wrong, but usually it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like it's a publicity thing. You're selling a book. It's like, they got my name wrong. Doesn't matter. Spelled the book right. But in general, people writing any kind of news about celebrities, they're going to get lots of context wrong. So this one was completely ripped out of the context. The context that should have been there, and I would have added it if it hadn't blown up, so it took me a while to get back to it, is that in a world in which, at least in America, probably in Europe too, the victimization model of their oppressors and their victims, and you got your CRT and your DEI and your ESG, and they all collectively tell a story that there's some people in America who are the bad ones, and I'm in that category. And the context was, if somebody is being trained by society, formally trained, to see you as the enemy, you should get as far away from them as you can. Because if people see you as the enemy, they're going to act that way, and that's bad. Now, on top of that, if you're a white guy in America and you go out for a job in, let's say, corporate America, and you have equal or similar resume, you don't really have a chance in corporate America because they can get a twofer if they hire somebody who's a minority. So, if all you're offering is a one-fer, well, I can do the work, but the next person comes in and says, I can do the work and I solve your other problem. It's not a good playing field. So strategically, if I were giving advice, I'd say, are you black or female or LGBTQ? Go toward corporate America. They love you. They're looking for you. They're going to really try hard to make it work. If you're a white male in America, you might want to think of being an entrepreneur, maybe work for a relative or something, because you're really going to be disadvantaged. Now, I'm speaking from experience. My first corporate job was at a bank. And one day my boss called me in and said, I don't know how to tell you this, but the word came down from senior management that we can't promote white men anymore. And I said, what?
Yeah.
Seriously? Is that a real thing?
And this was in the 90s, right?
Yeah. And they said, yeah, and we're telling you directly. We're not hinting at it. They told us we're in trouble if we promote you. So I was finishing my MBA at the time, and they promoted my coworker who had a high school education. And this is banking.
Yeah.
I was working on an MBA, and I had a degree in economics. So that was my first experience. Like, we're not really similarly skilled. There was a pretty big gap there. So I left. I was like, okay, I'm not going to put up with this. So I went to the phone company, and I got put on the fast track. Like, they identified me as a future executive. And one day, after a few years of that, and things were looking good, and I was checking all the boxes, and I finished my MBA. It looked like I was going to be in senior management one day. My boss called me in his office, and again said the exact same thing. We got caught with no diversity in senior management. We got to fix it. The press is all over us, and until further notice, we can't promote you because you're white and male. And I said, really? So wherever I go, my next job would be the same thing, right?
Did you ever think of becoming trans?
I briefly considered transitioning. That's the best career advice I've gotten. Thank you. No, that's when I started working on Dilbert.
Okay.
Because I thought if I do something that doesn't have a boss, it could work out. And then that did work out. And then I got a TV show. Dilbert was briefly animated TV show on the old UPN network. It ran on Monday night, and it did well enough to be renewed. The second year, UPN decided that they were going to turn Monday night into an all African-American block, comedy block. So Dilbert didn't fit there, so it got bumped to a different night. And in the world of TV, most TV people will tell you that if you lose your time slot, you usually get canceled soon after. Because once you've developed a little audience, they're very habit-driven. So I ended up getting out of the TV business because we lost our audience then. So in the context of getting employment, you've got an extra challenge if you're a white male, if you're in a diverse situation because of the need for DEI and diversity. If, basically, anything you say gets treated a little bit harsher depending on who you are. So you've got a free speech problem that's a little bit harder. So the basic idea is that it's not about individuals. It has nothing to do with any specific person, any black person, anybody's genes. None of that is part of the conversation. It is purely the system. So the part that, when I say that public figures, the news is always inaccurate, the way the news reported it sounded like I don't like black people.
Yeah.
Is that what it kind of sounded like?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it sounded like that to me. And I've got a pretty high bar. I'm not in the call everything and everyone racist crowd.
But that's what it sounded like.
I was like,
right?
Oh, I'd had you on my podcast before. I've been following you for years, whatever. I was like, ooh, that was a bit of a, that was a strong one there.
Yeah.
What was that about? That was my initial.
No, I was also trying to shock.
Okay.
So I was trying to make everybody go, my God, you can't say that. What are you saying, you bastard? I'm sorry. It slipped out.
It's okay.
So I was trying to get people riled up to draw their attention, which is a process I've used quite a bit in podcasting. First, I'll say something provocative. Then I'll get people's attention, and then I'll fix it. Because once you're paying attention, I'll say something like I just said, and people go, oh, yeah, I guess that would be hard for you to get employment if you're fighting against diversity goals as well.
Yeah.
So there's not much there that's actually provocative. I'm not aware of anybody who's disagreed with me yet. But if they tell it out of context, it sounds like, man, that guy hates black people. I've never hated a black person in my life.
Yeah.
I've never had a bad experience, even once.
Yeah.
In fact, most of the crimes I've been subjected to are all white people.
Yeah.
Like I've been robbed several times at gunpoint. All white people.
Why do you think there's so much, to this day, I kind of find it nutty that it's 2024 and I still have conversations about race. Sometimes it makes my own eyes internally roll. But one big difference I notice being from the UK versus when I'm in the US is that the USA is a lot more racialist.
Right.
I'm not saying racist, but racialist, meaning that the way people view things and frame things and speak, the lens of race is used much more than it is, for example, in the UK. The example I often use with my American friends is in the UK, we don't use prefixes with the word British very often. So no one would say that I'm African British or I'm Black British. You don't have, oh, he's Asian British, he's white British. It even sounds strange.
Right.
But in the US, Black American, Jewish American, African American, white American, Latino American, it's just in the terminology, it's in the media, it's in the books. People's just everyday language is a lot more racialized. And it seems like from a young age, I understand obviously there's historical context to this, but it's like people are brought up to see it and focus on it a lot more than they are, for example, in the UK or from my understanding in Canada. So what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that's something that is useful or necessary, or do you think that's something that people should strive to get past?
Well, I think there's a lot of people looking for advantage, basically. So if you can carve out yourself as a victim and you say, I'm one of these, whatever that is, then you can get some economic advantage or social advantage. So I think it's mostly just people pursuing some kind of advantage. But to your point about Black American, whatever American, I like adding the American part because that's the important part. And if somebody else is going to bring up the category, I always add an American to it to bring it back to the core.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think with what I find concerning is, I think a lot of people have found concerning with what they call the woke left or DEI or critical race theory, whatever terminology people want to use to discuss this narrative, is it seems like a regression in terms of thought, in terms of society, culture, politics. From my understanding, when I look at human history, or I look at even just at the history of the US, the big problem for a long time was the collective racial narratives. It was the fact that, oh, we're not going to see people as individuals and treat them as such. These are white people, these are black people, these are whatever. So different laws, different social standards, different rules for different people. And that was obviously a problem for a long period of time. And then it seems like, let's say from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even 2000s in particular, that was all getting better and better. And it seems like starting midway through the 2010s in particular, in a very mainstream fashion, that's when you started getting the, oh, no, colorblindness is bad. Oh, no, you must see race. Oh, no, you actually should treat people differently based on their skin color. And it was this strange inversion that happened in the name of, by people who call themselves progressive, who are then saying that, oh, no, you're a bad person if you don't go by this victim hierarchy and this oppressor versus victim narratives across all of these different ways. And it seems in that sense, people have gone backwards over the past decade.
That if anybody's using a technique that works, it's, you just want to use it. So if you see somebody saying, well, I got discriminated against, it's just such a habit to say, well, maybe I got discriminated against, so you get just primed to think of it that way. So my take is that if we teach people success tools, then all of those things won't matter.